Hello, I'm Barbara O'Neill. Today we're diving into detoxification and fasting. Detoxifying our bodies is crucial in today's world, filled with environmental toxins and processed foods. But have you ever wondered how fasting can help in this natural cleansing process? Well, through fasting, we can give our digestive system a break and allow it to focus on repair and rejuvenation. Join me as we explore the science behind detoxification and fasting and discover practical ways to incorporate these practices into your life for a healthier, more vibrant you. This is a key information that you won't want to miss.
But part of healing the body is detoxification, because we all have been subject to environmental poisons at different times in our lives. And whenever an environmental poison comes into our body, the first place it goes is the liver. And the liver, I call the liver the project manager, because the liver is the one that deals with everything that comes in. So if an environmental poison comes in, it goes straight to the liver, as everything does. You see, on a job site, the project manager, he's orchestrating it. So if the plumbers come in, they go to the project manager. If the plasterers come in, they go to the project manager. So the project manager is orchestrating the job site. So we look at the job site being the human body. So environmental poisons come in, and the liver has a look at some of them and says, we can process that and eliminate it, but this one's nasty. We've got to wrap it up in fat and store it. And so this is often what happens when environmental poisons come in. They're locked up in the fat cells. It's almost like it's a little compartment that it's sort of holding it there so it's not going to poison us.
When these poisons are stored in fat cells, they can remain in the body for years, potentially causing health issues over time. This is why detoxification is so important. By supporting the liver and promoting the removal of these toxins, we can help our bodies heal and function more effectively. There are several ways to support the liver and enhance detoxification that we will be looking at in today's video.
But carbohydrates have become a huge part of people's diet today. And I want to show you what they break down to, and I want to show you what the liver does with that as the project manager. So what would be your carbohydrates? Bread, that's a high carbohydrate. Cereal is another high carbohydrate. Pasta, yep. What you call French fries, we also call chips. So chips are like French fries, and chips are also the thin, crispy that you buy. Rice, that's right. And pizza, that's another one that's become popular. Yes, potatoes. And we could do a whole list, but we're just going to put cakes, etc. So cakes, etc. takes into consideration pretzels, biscuits, cake. You call them cookies, we call them biscuits, croissants, donuts. This is the whole lot there. Rice is, yes, another carbohydrate, and sugar, that's a pure carbohydrate. In the gastrointestinal tract, these foods all break down to a singular structure called glucose. Now, while I'm talking about the liver, I'd like to stop for a moment and talk about fatty liver. Fatty liver has been quite common with usually alcoholics, and that's not a surprising because the huge amount of glucose they're taking. But when fruit breaks down, it breaks down in the liver, in the gastrointestinal tract to two singular structures, fructose and glucose. So fructose is a singular structure as glucose is. The fructose and the glucose go into the blood. I call M1, main highway, project manager, takes it from the portal veins straight to project manager. And it's in the liver that fructose is converted to glucose. And as glucose, then it's sent to the cell. So let's have another look at the cell. We've looked at the cell a few times. We'll be looking at quite a few times. You'll know it off by heart by the end of the week. And I'm sure when I first wrote this, you thought, what's she talking about? But you'll get it. So the glucose goes in and it goes through the 20-step pathway. We certainly looked at that when we were looking at cancer, and it gives us 2 units of energy. And the end result of that is the chemical form of glucose called pyruvate. And this chemical form of glucose, pyruvate, gets fed into the 8-step pathway. We looked at how it's called the powerhouse of the cell because it gives us 36 units of energy. And what makes the difference is oxygen. This pathway, no oxygen. So that's how the energy cycle in the cell runs. So when glucose and fructose both go to the liver converts the fructose to glucose and then sends it to the cell to go through the energy pathways.
While carbohydrates are essential for energy, excessive intake, especially of simple carbohydrates, can contribute significantly to the development of fatty liver disease and other metabolic disorders. Here's how it happens. When we consume high amounts of these carbohydrates, the liver converts them into glucose. Excess glucose that isn't immediately needed for energy is stored as glycogen. However, the liver has limited glycogen storage capacity. Once this capacity is reached, any remaining glucose is converted into triglycerides, fat molecules. These triglycerides are then stored in the liver, leading to an accumulation of fat in the liver cells, known as hepatic steatosis or fatty liver.
Let's go back to having a look at what happens with the food we eat. So the food we eat breaks down to glucose, and the first place the glucose, of course, first goes to the liver, and then it's the liver that sends it down the energy cycle. So number one, it's sent to the cell to be burnt as fuel. But on a high carbohydrate diet, we've still got a lot of glucose left. And so now it's stored. It's stored and it looks like a little bunch of grapes, and it's sort of like that, but they're little molecules of glucose. And they're called glycogen. Glycogen is a name given to quick-release glucose stores. And we're going to look at that in more detail tomorrow. I think tomorrow we're looking at diabetes. So that's why you don't have to eat before you exercise. Because if you start running out of fuel, you've got little molecules of glucose sitting in your muscle cells just waiting to be plucked. And it's almost like they're in a prison. They can only be used by the muscle cell. But the liver also stores some glycogen. Can only store so much. And the glycogen that is stored in the liver, that can be sent all over the body. So that's a good backup for brain. It's like when you're exercising and you're running out of fuel, your glycogen stores are released. What about the brain? Well, you've got them in the liver. You've just got to make sure you drink water before you go on your morning walk, because you need that water to be able to release our stores. It's an amazing process. And tomorrow you'll see what an important part of managing diabetes this is. But today we're just looking at the liver and how it deals with this. On a high carbohydrate diet, we've still got glucose left over. It's almost, overload of glucose. And so now the liver stores it in the most amazing fuel depot in the human body, which is fat. Looking at that, can you see that fat doesn't make you fat? And we'll be looking at that in detail when, I think it's tomorrow, we also look at weight loss in the evening. I've just given the basic science there.
Understanding how the liver handles excess glucose is key to understanding our body's metabolism. When we consume a lot of carbohydrates, the extra glucose is stored cleverly as glycogen and fat. This ensures we have a constant energy supply when needed. It's like having a reserve tank for energy, especially useful during exercise when our muscles need fuel quickly. The liver does an amazing job of keeping our blood sugar steady and providing fuel for our brains, showing just how adaptable our bodies are.
One of the most effective ways to detoxify our body is to stop eating. And the reason for this is that a huge amount of energy is required to digest a meal. About 1,200 calories is required to digest a meal. So when you stop eating, all those calories are now looking for something to do. And what they do is they look around at the body and they go to the place in the body that needs the most help. It can be likened to what happened, I'll tell you what happens to me. If I'm on holidays at home, I go to the place that's been bugging me. Every day I sweep the floor and wash the dishes and make the bed and wash the clothes. You know, you've got your maintenance, but over in the corner there's a pile of papers that's piling up. And I'm thinking I'll get to that. But it's not a priority. And then when I'm on holidays, I go, in fact, last holidays, I think I pulled my whole bookcase apart because I love reading. And sometimes you read a book and it's fantastic and some it's just okay. So the okay's got given away. That's what your body does when you fast. It's got this extra energy. But before it can cause any regeneration or restoration, it's got to clean the house. And so when I pulled all the books out of the bookcase, before I put the books back, what do? I clean my bookcase because a bit of dust gets built up. I might even be brave enough to pull the bookcase out and look behind it. That's what your body's doing when you're fasting. But before it can do any restoration or regeneration, it's got a clean house. And that's why a detox is often called a cleanse. You've probably heard it called that. So that's one reason why it's called a cleanse. The other reason is that even when you're having juices, you're not really getting enough fuel to run on. And so the body starts breaking down the fat stores. Because remember what that fat is. It's stored glucose. So when you're on a fast, it starts to break down the fat stores to release the glucose that the cells need for fuel. But something else a little more sinister is also being released, and that's the fat-soluble toxins.
These toxins, stored in fat, are released into the bloodstream during fasting. This process can be intense initially, often causing symptoms like headaches or fatigue known as detox symptoms. However, as the body adjusts and continues to use fat stores for energy, it gradually eliminates these toxins. This dual action of energy redirection and toxin release is why fasting is considered a powerful detox method. Supporters argue it not only rejuvenates the body, but also enhances mental clarity and overall well-being.
And we want to bypass digestion so that all that energy goes to cleaning house, goes to restoration, regeneration. So our guests have a meal Sunday. And so by the evening, when probably usually some solid food will come, the body starts realizing there's no food coming. And so even Sunday night, the body can start breaking down those fat stores. That fat-soluble toxin that's stored in the fat stores, it cannot be released as a fat-soluble state. It has to be broken down to a water-soluble state. And so the liver does this in 3 phases. So phase 1 with some people is happening Sunday night, with some people it's happening Monday morning. In phase 1, the liver takes the fat-soluble toxin, because even though we supply a lot of juices, it's still not quite enough for the needs of the cell. And that's why the fat cells start getting broken down. So the fat-soluble toxins are once again released into the bloodstream. The fat-soluble toxins once again come to the liver. And the liver's about to say, not this guy again, wrap him up in fat and store him. And then the liver says, actually, they're at the health retreat. they're getting the nutrients necessary to break this down to a water-soluble state. And so the liver now puts it through those phases. Phase 1, the liver takes this fat-soluble toxin and it breaks it down to a metabolite. A metabolite simply means the first stage of metabolism or breakdown. But this metabolite is nasty. Sometimes it's 100 times more toxic than it originally was, especially in the case of alcohol. Sometimes it starts releasing a lot of free radicals. What are free radicals? Free radicals are atoms with an electron short. So with an atom, you need to have equal electrons on the outside that are spinning around to neutrons. But what happens is often environmental poisons will take that electron, so now we've got an unstable atom, and that unstable atom's looking for another electron, so it'll take it from another atom. Now there's a free radical, it'll take it, and then another free radical. You've probably heard of free radical damage. This metabolite is highly volatile. And you might look at this and comment and say, well, what's the liver doing? It's just created something worse than it originally was. It's a process. So when you're cleaning out the kitchen cupboards, the kitchen looks 100 times worse than when you started. Within 36 hours of beginning a detox program, phase 2 kicks in. And in phase 2, the liver takes this highly toxic metabolite and it joins it together with amino acids. So the union of this highly toxic metabolite and the amino acids, it's like a joining together. Amino acids and the toxic metabolite, and this produces the water-soluble state. Now, do you remember what I said earlier? The liver cannot release out of the body the environmental poison in a fat-soluble state. It needs to be in a water-soluble state. So the 2 stages are the first breakdown and then the joining together of the amino acids with the toxic metabolite. This explains why we give 2 protein drinks on Monday, but on Tuesday, when our guests are going into phase 2, we serve 3 protein drinks. So we're supplying the amino acids, but we are bypassing digestion. Digestion takes maybe 10 minutes. It's very, very brief. And the pea protein that we buy has had enzymic effect on it so that it's pre-digested. One guest said, who digested it? It's like milk being converted to yogurt. It's a pre-digested. The sourdough bread, that culturing process breaks down. So those enzymes can break the food down. So it's basically in a pre-digested state. Because we want to bypass digestion. Because we want the body to go into a cleaning with detoxification. Phase 3 happens in conjunction with phase 2. In phase 3, the liver takes the water-soluble state and it releases it out via your sweat glands. It releases it out via your colon. And it releases it out via your kidneys in the urine. And after the break, we're going to go into detail those organs and how they release out the waste. It's one thing to break down these environmental poisons to a water-soluble state, but the next stage is just as important, which is giving the organs of elimination the right conditions so that it can be eliminated efficiently and effectively. This information has only been known since the early 2000s, and it explains so much, but it also shows why it is unwise and unsafe to do a water fast. Because especially if someone has environmental poisons, quite a few stored up in their fat cells, and we find it in the farmer who's been using a lot of chemicals. We find it in the hairdresser who's been using a lot of chemicals. We find it in the cleaner who's been cleaning with a lot of chemicals.
Thank you so much for joining me today as we explored the powerful connection between detoxification and fasting. Whether you're new to fasting or looking to deepen your understanding, I hope this video has sparked some ideas on how to incorporate these practices into your life. If you found this information helpful, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing with others who might benefit. Together we can embrace these healthy habits and thrive both physically and mentally. Thank you again for watching, and take care until next time.